Disclaimer, the story is true, but names and identities have been changed for anonymity.
They say love is blind. I disagree. Love isn't blind. Love is just a terrible accountant. It looks at the debts, the subtle insults, the forgotten anniversaries, the lingering way he looks at the Pilates instructor, and it files them under operating expenses. You convince yourself that the bottom line, that occasional moment of affection, outweighs the daily loss. My name is Veronica Stone. I built a real estate empire in Chicago from absolutely nothing. I know how to appraise an asset. I know when an investment is toxic. And yet, it took me 10 years to realize that my biggest liability was sleeping in my bed every night. My husband, Greg. Greg is beautiful. He's the kind of man that makes receptionists stumble over their words. He was a former professional tennis player who never made it to the top rankings, but kept the tan and the smile of someone who won Wimbledon. When we met, I was already wealthy. I knew what he saw. I am not stupid. I have mirrors in my house. I know I don't look like the models he used to date. I am big. I take up space. But I thought we had a deal. I provided the lifestyle, the mansion on Lakeshore Drive, the Ferrari in the garage, the Centurion card with no limit, and he provided the companionship, the charm at business dinners, and the illusion of adoration. It worked for a while, or I thought it worked. The problem with parasites is that they're never satisfied with just the blood you offer. Eventually, they want the entire host, and this parasite had a coach, his mother, Beatrice. Beatrice is a small, dried-up woman with hairspray-hardened hair that looks like a helmet and eyes that assess the cost of everything they see. She moved into our guest house temporarily 3 years ago. The incident happened on a Thursday night. I had just closed a $50 million deal for a new commercial complex. I was exhausted, but euphoric. I came home expecting, I don't know what I expected. A congratulations? A hug? The house was silent. The lights were dimmed. I went toward the library. It is my sanctuary. Dark wood, the smell of old books, and money. The door was slightly ajar. I heard voices. Greg and Beatrice. They were drinking my Macallan 25-year-old scotch. I stopped. I don't know why I stopped. Maybe a primal instinct for survival. I stayed in the shadows of the hallway, where the Persian rug muffled my footsteps. She is becoming unbearable, Greg. Beatrice's voice was sharp, like broken glass. That speech she gave about hard work at dinner yesterday, I almost vomited my caviar. I heard the ice clink in Greg's glass. I know, Mom, I know. But have patience. The new complex was just signed. Her net worth is going to jump another 20% this year. And how much longer are you going to endure it? Look at her, Greg. It's embarrassing. There was a pause, the longest silence of my life. And then Greg spoke. His voice wasn't the charming voice he used with me. It was cold, bored, and cruel. Mom, relax. Do you think I like sleeping next to that fat hippo? Every time she touches me, I have to think of someone else just to get it. You know, she disgusts me. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The air left my lungs. Fat hippo disgusts me. But, Greg continued, and I could hear the smile in his voice, the hippo is a golden hippopotamus. I just need to hold out for 2 more years. The prenup has an adjustment clause at 10 years of marriage. If I divorce her after that, I get half of everything. And then we can ship her back to the swamp she came from and live like kings. Beatrice laughed, a dry, satisfied cackle. Good boy. Keep your eyes on the prize. More whiskey? I didn't move. I didn't cry. I didn't storm into the room screaming like a betrayed wife in a bad soap opera. In that dark hallway, as my husband and my mother-in-law toasted to my future financial destruction and mocked my body, something inside me died. The Veronica who wanted to be loved died. And in her place, Veronica Stone, the real estate shark, took control. I turned around silently. I walked back to the front entrance. I slammed the front door hard, pretending I had just arrived that very moment. I'm home, I shouted, with the cheerful voice I could fake. Gren walked out of the library seconds later. The charming smile was back on his face. Darling, how was the closing? He came to kiss me. I smelled my whiskey on his breath. I felt the touch of his hand on my arm, the skin that minutes ago he said disgusted him. I smiled. It was the best deal I ever closed. It was wonderful, Greg. Absolutely wonderful, but I'm exhausted. I'm going up for a bath. I walked up the stairs. I could feel their eyes on my back, the hippo climbing up to the slaughter. They had a 2-year plan. They thought they had time. They didn't know that their deadline had just expired. They didn't know that as I climbed those stairs, I was already calculating the liquidation. I entered my bedroom, locked the door, and took out my secure phone, the one Greg didn't know existed. I wasn't going to wait 2 years. I wasn't going to wait 2 days. Tomorrow was Friday, and Friday is an excellent day for a fire sale. I looked in the mirror. I saw the hippo, and then I saw the teeth. The game had begun, and I was going to break the bank. The most difficult part of a lie isn't the words you say, it's the silence you keep. I woke up at 6 a.m. on Friday morning. Greg was still asleep beside me. He was snoring softly, his arm thrown over his eyes to block the sun. For a moment, looking at him, I felt a ghost of the old affection. He looked innocent in his sleep. Then I remembered the word, hippopotamus. The ghost vanished. I got out of bed and walked to the bathroom. I didn't slam doors, I didn't cry. I initiated protocol wife. I showered, dressed in my power suit, cream silk, Italian cut, and went downstairs. I could hear Beatrice in the kitchen, harassing the housekeeper about the quality of the coffee beans. "Good morning, Beatrice," I said, walking in with a smile that could cut glass. "Is that a new blouse?" Beatrice looked at me with suspicion. Usually I grunted a greeting and buried my face in my iPad. "It's 3 years old, Veronica," she sniffed. "Not all of us buy a new wardrobe every season." "Well, it suits you." I poured myself a black coffee. "Listen, I was thinking about last night, about what Greg said." Beatrice froze. Her hand holding the cup stopped midair. What did Greg say?" "About the stress," I lied smoothly. "About how hard I've been working. He's right, I've been neglecting family duties." Beatrice relaxed visibly. "Oh, well, yes, he worries about you." "So," I continued, leaning against the marble island, "I decided to do something about it. I made a few calls this morning. I booked a weekend at the Sanctuary Spa in Arizona for you and Greg. Private jet leaves at noon. Full package. Massages, mud baths, the works. Just the two of you to bond, while I wrap up the paperwork here." Beatrice's eyes widened. The calculation was instant. A private jet, a luxury spa, this was a 5-figure gift. "Oh, Veronica," she smiled, a fake, tight stretching of skin. "That is unexpectedly generous. But won't you come?" "I can't," I sighed, feigning regret. "The lawyers need me for the new complex signatures. I'll join you on Sunday night. Go, relax. You deserve it." She bought it. Of course she bought it. Greed creates a blind spot the size of a continent. Greg came down 10 minutes later. Beatrice whispered the news to him. I watched his face. First confusion, then relief. He didn't have to spend the weekend with the hippo. He gets a luxury trip with his mommy. "Babe, you're the best," he kissed my cheek. "Are you sure you don't mind?" "Go," I said, adjusting his collar. "Have fun. I insist." By 11 a.m., the limousine was in the driveway. I waved goodbye from the porch as they drove away. As soon as the taillights disappeared around the curve of the driveway, I dropped my hand. The smile fell off my face like a heavy mask. I turned around and walked back into the house. My prison. I looked at the grand foyer, the crystal chandelier, $45,000, the limited edition Banksy print, $120,000, the antique French console table, $18,000. I checked my watch, 11:05 a.m. I pulled out the secure phone. "It's me," I said when the line connected. "Execute." I didn't call a realtor. Realtors take months. They want stagings and open houses. I called Mr. Silas. Mr. Silas is not a realtor. He's an asset liquidator. He works for people who need money yesterday. Gamblers, criminals, and CEOs in trouble. He doesn't ask questions. He just brings cash and a truck. He arrived at 11:45 a.m. in a black SUV. He was a small man with glasses and an iPad. "Mrs. Stone?" He nodded. "You said everything?" Everything, I said, walking him into the living room. Furniture, art, the wine cellar, the cars in the garage, except the SUV I'm taking, and the house itself. Silas looked around. He whistled low. This is a fire sale, Veronica. You know you'll take a hit. 30 cents on the dollar for the goods, 70% of market value for the property if you want a cash close in 24 hours. I don't care about the hit, I said coldly. I care about the speed. Can you move the inventory today? I have a buyer for the art in New York. They can wire the funds by 4 p.m. The furniture, my staging company will take the lot. The cars, my guy in Jersey will take them tonight. And the house? That's trickier. $4 million homes don't sell in a day. It's not $4 million today, Silas. It's 2.5, cash, as is. Silas stopped typing. He looked at me over his glasses. At 2.5, I'll buy it myself. Sold, I said. Draft the papers. I want the wire to hit my offshore account by tomorrow morning. Done. For the next 8 hours, my house became a hive of silent, efficient activity. A team of movers arrived. They weren't the noisy kind. They wore gloves and worked with surgical precision. I stood in the library, the room where they had mocked me, and watched them pack the books. I watched them take the Macallan bottle Greg had been drinking from. Leave that glass, I told the mover, pointing to Greg's used tumbler on the coaster. The dirty one, ma'am? Yes, leave it right there. I wanted a ghost to remain, a memory of his arrogance. While the house was being stripped, I went upstairs to deal with the finances. This was the dangerous part. Greg had a supplementary card, but he didn't have access to the main accounts. However, under Illinois law, he had a marital claim to liquidity if I just transferred it. I had to be smarter. I logged into my corporate accounts. I initiated a series of emergency loans to shell companies I had set up years ago in the Cayman Islands and Singapore. To any auditor, it would look like I was making aggressive business investments. By the time anyone unraveled the paper trail, the money would be bouncing through 3 different jurisdictions and landing in a trust that Veronica Stone didn't legally own. Then I went to the safe. Greg knew the code, 1, 2, 3, 4, because he's an idiot, but he didn't know about the false bottom. I lifted the velvet tray. Underneath were the diamonds, my grandmother's diamonds, not the flashy jewelry Greg liked me to wear, but the loose stones, the investment-grade rocks. I poured them into a velvet pouch. By 6 p.m., the house was unrecognizable. The rugs were gone, the paintings were gone, the furniture was gone. The only thing left was the echo. Silas walked up to me. The wires for the goods are confirmed. $450,000 for the contents, $120,000 for the cars. The house contract is ready. The notary is in the kitchen, or where the kitchen table used to be. I signed the deed. I signed my life away. You have until noon tomorrow to vacate, Silas said, handing me a copy. After that, my crew comes in to repaint. I'll be gone long before noon, I promised. I walked out to the garage. My Ferrari was gone. Greg's Porsche was gone. The only thing left was a modest black Range Rover. Practical, invisible. I opened the trunk. 1 suitcase. That was it. I went back inside for one last look. The house was a skeleton. It felt cleaner, lighter. I walked to the library. The glass was still there on the table. I took a piece of paper from my pocket. I had written a note. It wasn't a long letter. It wasn't a tearful explanation. It was an invoice. Item: 1 golden hippopotamus. Cost: everything you thought you had. Balance due: goodbye. I placed the note under the glass. My phone buzzed. It was Greg. A text message. Landed. The spa is amazing. Miss you, babe. Heart. I looked at the text. I looked at the empty house. Miss you too, I whispered to the empty room. I walked out the front door and locked it for the last time. I dropped the keys through the mail slot. Clink. The sound of finality. I got into the Range Rover. I didn't look back. The mobilization was complete. Now, the vanishing act began. But where does a woman with $4.4 million in liquid cash and a broken heart go? She goes to the one place Greg would never, ever look. There's a specific kind of silence that falls over a crime scene, but there is an even louder silence that falls over an empty house. It was Sunday night, 9:45 p.m. I wasn't there, of course. I was 2,000 miles away. But I paid Silas an extra $5,000 to send me the body cam footage from the private security firm he hired to guard the property. I call it the unboxing video. The limousine pulled up to the iron gates. Usually, the gates open automatically when they sense the transponder in Greg's car. But tonight, the gates remained shut. I saw Greg's arm reach out of the driver's window. He had dismissed the driver at the airport to drive his Porsche home, only to realize his Porsche was gone, so he had to take an Uber Black. Strike one. He punched the code into the keypad. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing. The red light blinked. Access denied. Idiot technology, I could imagine him saying. He punched it again, harder. Beatrice got out of the passenger side. She was holding a bag of expensive spa products. She was wearing a white cashmere wrap that would be ruined by the rain in 3 seconds. "Greg, what is going on?" she shouted over the wind. "Why are the gates locked?" "Power outage, maybe. We have to jump the fence." "I am not jumping a fence in Prada heels, Gregory." Eventually, they forced the manual release lever. They walked up the long driveway. It was a quarter-mile walk in the freezing rain. By the time they reached the front porch, the sanctuary spa glow was gone. They looked like drowned rats. Greg marched up to the front door. He jammed his key into the lock. It didn't turn. Silas is thorough. He changes the locks the minute the wire hits. Greg jiggled the handle. He kicked the door. "Veronica!" he screamed. "Veronica, open the damn door! It's freezing!" The house remained dark. Not a single light. No movement behind the curtains. Then the spotlight hit them. It came from the side of the garage, a blinding white beam. Greg threw his hands up, blinding him. "Security!" a deep voice boomed. "Step away from the door." A man stepped into the light. He was the size of a vending machine, wearing a tactical vest with the logo Titan Protection. "Who the hell are you?" Greg demanded, trying to regain his alpha composure. "I live here. I'm Greg Stone. My wife is inside." "Nobody's inside, sir," the guard said. His voice was flat. "And you are trespassing on private property." "Trespassing?" Beatrice shrieked. "This is my son's house! Call Veronica! Tell her to stop this nonsense immediately!" The property changed ownership on Friday. The previous owner vacated the premises. The new owner, Apex Asset Management, has strict instructions: no unauthorized entry. Previous owner? Greg's face went pale in the harsh light. "What are you talking about? Veronica can't sell the house without me. I have rights. I have a marital interest." "Sir, I'm just security. I have a box for you." The guard reached behind a pillar and pulled out a small cardboard box. He handed it to Greg. It wasn't a big box. It's the kind you use to ship a pair of shoes. Greg opened it. His hands were shaking so hard the contents rattled. Inside, there were 3 things: his dirty whiskey glass, Beatrice's temporary house key, and the invoice. Greg picked up the paper. The rain was blurring the ink, but he could still read it. Item: 1 golden hippopotamus. Cost: everything. I watched the realization hit him. It wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a slow, creeping horror. He looked at the dark windows. He realized the curtains were gone. He realized the echo was different. She sold it. She actually sold it. "Where is she?" Greg grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his wet jacket. "Greg, where is the money? Where are the accounts?" Greg pulled out his phone. He frantically opened his banking app. I had left him the joint checking account, the one we used for groceries. It had a balance of $1,500. But the savings, the investment portfolio, the emergency fund? Error. Account not found. Error. User access revoked. "She emptied it!" Greg dropped the phone. It cracked on the pavement. "Call the police!" Beatrice screamed. "She stole it!" "She didn't steal it, Mom," Greg yelled back, his voice cracking. "It's her money. It was always her money. I just had a card." The guard stepped forward. "Sir, ma'am, you have 5 minutes to vacate the property before I call the sheriff. And trust me, you don't want the sheriff involved. I have a restraining order on file here against a Gregory Stone regarding domestic harassment." I hadn't filed a restraining order. Silas probably bluffed. Silas is good.
They didn't leave with dignity. They didn't storm off. They trudged back down the driveway in the rain, dragging their spa bags, arguing. "You said we had 2 years. Shut up, Mom. You called her a hippo, you idiot. You called her embarrassing." I turned off the video. I was sitting in front of a fireplace, but not in Chicago. I was in a cabin in Wyoming. It wasn't a luxury chalet in Aspen. It was a real cabin, rough-hewn logs, isolated, 40 miles from the nearest town. I had bought it under a shell company 3 years ago as a potential investment and forgotten about it. It had no internets, unless I turned on the satellite. It had no neighbors. It had a gym in the basement that the previous owner, a survivalist, had installed. I looked out the window. Just snow and pine trees. I looked at my reflection in the dark glass. The golden hippopotamus was dead. Veronica Stone, the CEO, was missing. What was left was a woman with $4.4 million, a lot of free time, and a burning rage that needed to be channeled. I walked to the basement. I looked at the equipment. Heavy weights, a treadmill, a punching bag. I hadn't exercised in 10 years. I had been too busy making money for Greg to spend. I touched the punching bag. It was cold and hard. "Day 1, I whispered. I wasn't just hiding. I was transforming. Greg wanted a trophy wife. Fine, I would become a trophy. But a trophy is something you win, and he had already lost the game. My phone buzzed, the burner phone. It was a text from Silas. Subject, the aftermath. They are staying at a Motel 6 in the suburbs. He tried to use the Centurion card. Declined. He is calling your office every 10 minutes. What are your instructions? I smiled. Instructions? Let it ring. I threw the phone on the sofa. I put on my sneakers. I started to run on the treadmill. I lasted 3 minutes before I thought my lungs would explode. I collapsed on the floor, gasping for air, sweating, my heart pounding in my ears. I felt heavy. I felt weak. But for the first time in a decade, the pain I felt was my own. It wasn't the pain of rejection. It wasn't the pain of betrayal. It was the pain of effort. And that is a pain I can work with. I stood up. Again, I said to the empty room. The vanishing act was over. The reconstruction had begun.
There is a misconception that the law is about justice. It isn't. The law is about attrition. It is a game of who can hold their breath the longest while their bank account bleeds out. I had $4.4 million and 0 overhead costs in my cabin. Greg had a checking account with $1,500 and a mother who demanded high thread count sheets. The siege began on a Tuesday, 10 days after the vanishing. I received a notification from my primary attorney in Chicago, Marcus Sterling. Marcus costs $1,200 an hour. He's worth it because he doesn't have a conscience. He has a strategy. Subject, litigation alert. Gregory Stone has retained counsel. Better call Bob type. They filed an emergency motion for the freezing of assets and a claim for dissipation of marital estate. They want a hearing on Friday. I smiled. Greg was predictable. He found a lawyer who would work on contingency, a no-win, no-fee shark who smelled a payout from a wealthy wife. I called Marcus from my satellite phone. I was sweating. I had just finished a 5-mile run in the snow. My legs were burning, but my mind was razor sharp. Let them have the hearing, I told Marcus. Do not settle. Do not offer a dime. I want you to bury them in paper. They are claiming you stole the money, Veronica, Marcus warned. The judge might frown on the offshore transfers. I didn't steal it, I corrected him, drinking water from a tin cup. I reallocated corporate capital into diversified international trusts for tax efficiency. Greg is a minority shareholder in the holding company via marriage. He has no voting rights. If he wants to challenge the allocation, he needs a forensic audit. And a forensic audit costs $50,000, Marcus finished the thought, chuckling, which he doesn't have. Exactly. Starve him, Marcus. Delay, obfuscate, request extensions. If he wants a war, make him pay for every single bullet. I watched the war unfold from my iPad. Week 2, the motel phase. Greg and Beatrice were staying at the Motel 6 Silas had identified. It wasn't the worst place in the world, but for Beatrice, it was Guantanamo Bay. I saw the credit card decline reports. Charge attempt, Les Bernardines, $400, declined. Charge attempt, Saks Fifth Avenue, $1,200, declined. Charge attempt, Uber Eats, $45, approved. They were eating fast food. The golden hippopotamus diet was over. Week 3, the discovery phase. Greg's lawyer, a man named Bob Miller who wore suits that were 2 sizes too big, sent a request for discovery. He wanted my bank statements, my location, and a list of assets. Marcus responded with a dump. In legal terms, a dump is when you send the opposition so much paperwork that they drown in it. We sent them 40,000 pages of corporate tax returns, real estate amortization schedules, and complex trust deeds written in Singaporean legalese. If Bob Miller wanted to find the money, he would have to read every page. And since Bob was working on contingency, he wasn't getting paid to read. He was getting annoyed. Week 4, the crack in the armor. Greg was getting desperate. I knew this because he started selling things. Silas sent me a photo. It was Greg standing in a pawn shop in downtown Chicago. He was selling his Rolex Daytona, the watch I bought him for our 5th anniversary. Retail price, $35,000. The pawn shop ticket, $8,000. He looked tired. His tan was fading. He hadn't had a haircut in a month. But the real blow came when I decided to go on the offensive. You see, Greg thought the battle was about my money. He forgot that I knew about his secrets. I instructed Marcus to file a countermotion, Stone versus Stone, allegation of marital waste. Marital waste is a legal term for when one spouse spends family money on things that do not benefit the marriage, like gambling, or prostitutes, or a mistress. I had the receipts. For years, I had ignored the withdrawals, the business trips to Vegas, the Venmo payments to a woman named Candy Lexus. I had filed them away in the operating expenses folder of my heart. Now, I opened the folder. We sent the dossier to Bob Miller. Exhibit A, $150,000 in online poker losses over 3 years. Exhibit B, $45,000 in payments to Crystal Escort Services. Exhibit C, the lease of an apartment in the Gold Coast district occupied by a 22-year-old yoga instructor named Tiffany. I wasn't just defending my money, I was nuking his character. The effect was immediate. Greg called my secure voicemail. He left 10 messages in 1 hour. Veronica, you can't put this in the public record. My mother will see it. The press will see it. I'll be ruined. I listened to the messages while I did push-ups in my living room. 39, 40, 41. His panic was my playlist. Then the inevitable happened. Beatrice found out. I don't know how. Maybe Bob Miller told her. Maybe she snooped through Greg's legal papers in the motel room. But the explosion was nuclear. Silas sent me a police scanner report that night. Disturbance at Motel 6, room 204. Verbal altercation between 2 subjects. Elderly females screaming at adult male. Beatrice realized that her golden boy wasn't just a victim of a cruel wife. He was a degenerate gambler who had blown his own safety net on poker and girls. She realized there was no half to win in the divorce. Even if they won, my lawyers would argue that Greg had already spent his share on Candy Lexus. Week 6, the settlement offer. Bob Miller emailed Marcus. The tone had changed. No more demands for immediate freezing of assets. Now it was a plea. Mr. Stone is willing to drop the lawsuit and the claim on the estate in exchange for a one-time cash settlement of $500,000 and the return of his Porsche. I laughed so hard, the sound echoed off the snowy mountains. $500,000? He was dreaming. I typed my reply to Marcus. Counteroffer, $0, but I will agree to not release the Exhibit B, escort services, to the local tabloids if he signs the divorce papers today. Uncontested, he gets nothing, I keep everything, and he pays his own legal fees. That's brutal, Veronica, Marcus said when I read it to him. He's broke. He can't pay Bob Miller. If you don't give him something, Bob will sue him.
That sounds like a Bob and Greg problem, I said. Send the offer, take it or leave it. The deadline is 24 hours. I hung up. I walked to the mirror in the bathroom. It had been 6 weeks. The face staring back at me was different. The jawline was sharper, the skin, free of expensive creams, but flushed with mountain air and sweat, was clearer. I had lost 20 pounds, not from a diet, but from the sheer metabolic burn of hatred and hiking. I flexed my arm. A muscle, a real hard muscle, popped under the skin. The hippopotamus was shedding its skin. Greg thought he was fighting a fat, sad wife who missed him. He didn't realize he was fighting a lean, mean, solitary machine. I went to the kitchen and grilled a trout I had caught myself in the river that morning. It tasted better than any Michelin star meal I had ever paid for. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Greg. Not a threat, not a plea, just a question. "Ronnie, are you ever coming back?" He used my nickname, the one he hadn't used in 5 years. I looked at the fire crackling in the hearth. "No," I whispered. "Ronnie is dead." I deleted the message. The legal siege was ending. The walls of his resistance were crumbling. He was out of ammo, out of money, and out of allies. But I wasn't done yet. Breaking him financially was just the appetizer. I needed to see him. Not now, not while I was still transforming, but soon. I wanted him to see what he had thrown away. I wanted him to see the golden hippopotamus when she was made of solid steel. But before that reunion, I had to deal with the one variable I hadn't calculated, the knock on my cabin door. I froze. Nobody knew where I was. Not Silas, not Marcus. I had routed my calls through 3 servers. I picked up the fire poker. I walked to the door. Outside, the snow was falling heavily. I opened the door a crack. Standing there, shivering in a parka that looked too thin for Wyoming, was the last person I expected to see. It wasn't Greg, it wasn't the police, it was the one person who could ruin everything.
I expected a hitman. I expected the sheriff. I even expected Greg, desperate and frozen. But standing on my porch, looking like a lost flamingo in the middle of the Arctic, was a girl who couldn't have been older than 23. She had long blonde hair, now matted with ice. She had the kind of face you see on Instagram filters. Perfect nose, full lips, eyelashes that defied gravity. I knew who she was instantly. I had seen her face on the Venmo transactions. I had seen her face in the dossier Marcus sent me. Tiffany, the mistress, the upgrade, the reason I was a hippopotamus. Are you Veronica?" She stuttered, her teeth chattering so loud I could hear them over the wind. I tightened my grip on the poker. "You have 5 seconds to give me one reason why I shouldn't slam this door in your face and let you freeze." I have his laptop," she gasped, holding up a black leather bag. "The one he hid from you, the one with the real accounts." I paused. Greg had a secret laptop? Of course he did. Narcissists always have layers of secrets. "1 second," I said. I looked at her. She was blue with cold. She wasn't a threat. She was a casualty. "Get in," I commanded, stepping aside. She stumbled in and collapsed near the fireplace. I didn't help her. I watched her shivering, hugging her knees. I felt a strange mixture of revulsion and curiosity. This was the woman my husband preferred. She looked like a child. I went to the kitchen and poured a mug of hot water. I didn't offer tea. Tea is for guests. Water is for refugees. "Here," I put the mug on the floor next to her. "Drink, then talk. How did you find me?" She grabbed the mug with both hands. "The deed," she whispered. "Greg left a box of papers at my apartment months ago. He forgot about it. When the money stopped and he started ignoring my calls, I went through it. I found a deed for a Shell Creek cabin in Wyoming. It was the only property listed under a company name I didn't recognize." "You're smarter than you look," I said coldly. "I'm not stupid," she snapped, looking up. Her mascara was running. "You know what you think. You think I'm a gold digger. You think I stole him." "Didn't you?" "He told me you were separated," she cried. "He told me you were roommates. He said you were abusive. He said you controlled his money and wouldn't let him leave. He cried, Veronica. He actually cried on my shoulder about how lonely he was." I laughed, a bitter, dry bark. Greg is a very good actor. He missed his calling in Hollywood. "I believed him," Tiffany said, her voice dropping.
I loved him, or I thought I did, until last week. What happened last week? He called me from a motel. He was screaming. He demanded I sell my car, the one he bought me, which is actually in my name, but he stopped making payments on, and wire him the cash. He said if I didn't help him, he would tell everyone I was a whore. He called me names, the same names he used to call you. I looked at her, the fat hippo and the yoga Barbie. We were different sides of the same coin. We were both just supply sources for Greg's ego. When I ran dry, he went to her. When she ran dry, he attacked her. So, I sat in the armchair opposite her. You hate him now? Join the club. The membership fee is high. I don't just hate him, Tiffany said, her eyes hardening. I want to bury him. He owes me $20,000 in rent. My landlord is evicting me. He promised to invest in my studio. He lied about everything. She pushed the black bag toward me. This is his burner laptop. He used it when he went to the bathroom or locked himself in the garage. He thought I didn't know the password. And do you? It's Roger Federer, she rolled her eyes. He's obsessed. I opened the laptop. I typed in the password. It unlocked. I didn't see pornography. I didn't see love letters. I saw spreadsheets. I saw offshore gambling sites. But more importantly, I saw a folder named Investor Pool. I clicked it. My heart started to race. Greg hadn't just been spending my money, he'd been investing money for his friends at the country club, doctors, lawyers, other tennis pros. They gave him cash thinking he was investing it in my real estate deals. He wasn't. He was running a Ponzi scheme, a small, sloppy, desperate Ponzi scheme. He was taking money from Peter to pay Paul and skimming the top for his poker habit. I scrolled down. The total liability was over $2 million. Oh, Greg, I whispered, you didn't just break your marriage vows. You broke federal law. This was it. This wasn't just marital waste. This was wire fraud. This was grand larceny. If I gave this to the police, Greg wouldn't just be broke, he'd be in prison for 10 to 15 years. I looked at Tiffany. She was watching me, waiting for a verdict. Do you know what is on this? I asked. She saw numbers, she shrugged. I figured it was bad. Is it bad? It's lethal, I said. I closed the laptop. I looked at the young woman shivering on my rug. Why bring it to me? Why not the police? Because the police won't pay my rent, she said, looking me in the eye, and I figured you might. I smiled. Finally, a transaction I understood. Honest greed. I respect that. How much? I asked. $50,000, she said, to clear my debts and to move to LA. I want to start over. Done. But not for the laptop. I can get this info eventually. I'm paying you for your testimony and for something else. What else? I need you to deliver a message. I'm going to arrange a meeting with Greg, and I need you to be the bait. He'll kill me. He won't touch you because you're going to tell him that I want to settle. You're going to tell him that I'm tired, that I'm scared, and that I'm ready to negotiate. Are you? I'm ready to negotiate. I stood up and walked to the window. The snow was stopping. But I'm not bringing a checkbook. I'm bringing handcuffs. I turned back to her. There's a guest room in the basement. It has a heater, shower, sleep. We leave tomorrow. Where are we going? Tiffany asked, stumbling up shakily. Back to Chicago, I said. It's time for the hippo to come out of the water. Tiffany paused at the basement door. She looked at me, really looked at me. You look different, she said. From the photos Greg showed me. You look strong. I am, I said. She went downstairs. I sat by the fire with the laptop. I felt the weight of it in my lap. It was the heavy artillery I had been waiting for. Greg thought he was playing a game against a scorned wife. He didn't realize he was playing against a CEO who just acquired a hostile witness and the smoking gun. I picked up my satellite phone and called Marcus. Marcus, I said, cancel the settlement offer. Veronica, why? Because we are not settling, I said. We are going for a total liquidation. Call the district attorney. I have something they might want to see. I looked at the flames. And Marcus, I said, book a venue, something public, something expensive. I want to meet Greg face to face. Are you sure? I'm sure. It's time for the closing statement.
They say you can never go home again. That is true, because the person who leaves is never the same person who returns. I had left Chicago a victim, a golden hippopotamus waddling to the slaughter. I was returning as something else entirely, a predator. It had been 8 weeks since the vanishing. I didn't hide this time. I booked the penthouse suite at the Four Seasons under my real name. I let the credit card transaction hit the system. It was a flare gun fired into the night sky. I'm here. Come and get me. Tiffany had done her job perfectly. She met Greg at a cheap diner. She cried. She told him I was broken in Wyoming. She told him I was terrified of the lawsuit and just wanted it to end. She told him I was willing to settle for half, $2.2 million. Greg must have salivated like Pavlov's dog. He agreed to the meeting instantly. He didn't even question why Tiffany was suddenly helping him again. Desperation makes men stupid. I chose the venue carefully. The Apex Club. It was on the 60th floor of a skyscraper I used to own. It was all glass, chrome, and views of Lake Michigan. It was the kind of place where Greg felt powerful, where he felt he belonged. It was a trap disguised as a throne room. I arrived 15 minutes early. I sat at a corner table, my back to the door. I ordered a sparkling water with lime. I wore a black jumpsuit by Alexander McQueen. It was tailored to within an inch of its life. It showed a waist that hadn't existed 2 months ago. My hair, usually in a sensible mom bob, was slicked back, severe and modern. I waited. At 7 p.m. exactly, I heard him. You know someone by their walk. Greg walked with a bounce, an unearned confidence that used to charm me and now just irritated me. I heard him speak to the hostess. His voice was louder than necessary. He was performing. I'm meeting my wife, Veronica Stone. She should be here. She's large, hard to miss. The hostess, a young woman who probably recognized him from the tabloids, hesitated. There is a Miss Stone in the corner, sir. Greg walked toward me. I could feel his presence behind me. I could smell his cologne, too much musk, trying to cover up the scent of motel soap and desperation. Veronica, he said. His tone was patronizing, the voice you use on a frightened child or a slow pet. I'm glad you finally came to your senses. Tiffany told me you were ready to stop this nonsense. He pulled out the chair opposite me and sat down. He started to speak again, probably to launch into a prepared speech about how he was the victim. And then I turned around. The silence that fell over the table was absolute. It was physical. Greg's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He blinked, once, twice. He looked at a face he recognized but didn't know. The hippo was gone. The double chin was gone. The soft, pleading eyes that always looked for his approval were gone. In their place were eyes like chips of blue ice. Hello, Greg, I said. My voice was lower, calmer. He stammered. He looked me up and down, unable to process the visual information. You lost weight. 50 pounds, I said, taking a sip of water. It's amazing what you can shed when you drop 220 pounds of dead weight in the form of a useless husband. His face reddened. The charm evaporated, replaced by the petulant anger of a narcissist denied his supply. Cut the crap, Veronica. I know you're bluffing. Tiffany told me everything. You're scared. You're hiding out in the woods because you know my lawyers are going to crush you. You stole marital assets. That's a felony. Is it? I asked, bored. My lawyers disagree, but we are not here to talk about my assets. We are here to talk about yours. I don't have any assets. You took them all. Oh, but you do, Greg. You have investors. I reached under the table and pulled out the black leather bag Tiffany had given me. I placed it on the white tablecloth. Greg stared at the bag. It was his burner laptop bag. The color drained from his face, leaving him a sickly gray paste. Where did you get that? He whispered. Does it matter? I unzipped the bag. I didn't take the laptop out. I just let him see it. The password is Roger Federer. Really, Greg, you couldn't even be original with your security. He looked around the room, suddenly terrified that people were watching.
Give it to me. That's my property. No, I said. It's evidence. I leaned forward. I know about the investor pool, Greg. I know about Dr. Eris at the club. I know about the Jenkins brothers. I know you took $2.4 million from your friends, promising them returns on my real estate deals that didn't exist. It was a bridge loan, he hissed, sweat popping out on his forehead. I was going to pay them back once the divorce settled, once I got my half. It's a Ponzi scheme, Greg. It's wire fraud. It's securities fraud. And since you used the U.S. mail to send some of those fake prospectuses, it's mail fraud too. We're talking about 20 years in federal prison, minimum.
He tried to laugh, but it came out as a dry choke. You're lying. You wouldn't do that. It would ruin your reputation too. The Stone name? My reputation is Teflon, I smiled. I'm the wronged wife. I'm the victim who discovered her husband was a criminal mastermind. Well, a criminal idiot, and bravely turned him in. The press will love it. The golden hippopotamus takes down the tennis pro con man. It will be a Netflix special by Christmas. Greg slumped in his chair. The fight drained out of him. He looked small. He looked like what he was, a failed athlete living on borrowed time and stolen money. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice hollow. "You want me to sign the divorce papers? Fine, I'll sign. Just give me the laptop. Don't ruin me." I shook my head slowly. "You don't get it, do you? I already have the divorce papers. Marcus filed them this morning. Incontestable based on infidelity and criminal conduct. You're already divorced, Greg. You just haven't opened your email yet." "Then what? What is this meeting for?" "This meeting," I said, standing up, towering over him in my heels, "is a courtesy. It's a head start." "A what?" "I sent a copy of the laptop's hard drive to the district attorney at 9 a.m. this morning, along with Tiffany's sworn affidavit. They are probably drafting the arrest warrant right now." Greg looked like he was going to vomit. You already gave it to them?" "I told you, Greg. I'm good at liquidation. I liquidated our marriage. Now I'm liquidating you." I picked up the laptop bag. "I suggest you run, Greg. Maybe you can make it to a non-extradition country before they freeze your passport. You have about an hour, maybe 2. I turned to leave. "Veronica, wait!" He grabbed my arm. His grip was weak, pathetic. "Please, Beatrice, my mother. It will kill her." I looked at his hand on my arm. I remembered the night in the hallway. She disgusts me. I calmly removed his hand with 2 fingers, as if peeling off a piece of lint. "Beatrice is a survivor, Greg. She'll find another host. You were just the appetizer." I walked away. I walked across the restaurant floor, the sound of my heels clicking on the marble. I felt the eyes of the room on me, a woman in power, a woman in control. I didn't look back at the broken man at the table. I walked to the elevator. The doors opened. Inside stood Marcus Sterling and a large man with a crew cut, the district attorney's lead investigator. "Is he here?" the investigator asked. "Table 4. He's all yours." The trap was sprung. The cage door had slammed shut. Now, all that was left was the cleanup.
Newton's third law states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. But in the world of high-stakes revenge, that isn't quite true. If you do it right, the reaction is exponentially disproportionate to the action. Greg called me a hippopotamus. In return, I took his life. I didn't leave the Apex building immediately. I stood in the shadow of the elevator bank in the lobby. I wanted to see it. I needed to witness the perp walk. At 7:45 p.m., the elevator doors opened. It wasn't the triumphant exit Greg usually made. He was flanked by 2 federal agents. His hands were cuffed behind his back. His jacket, the expensive Italian blazer he wore to impress me, was draped over his wrists to hide the steel, a small mercy he didn't deserve. He wasn't shouting anymore. He was weeping. It was a messy, snot-nosed sobbing that echoed in the marble lobby. "Please," he was saying to the agents, "it's a misunderstanding. My wife, she can explain. Let me call her." He looked up and saw me standing by the concierge desk. "Veronica!" he screamed, lunging forward before the agents yanked him back. "Veronica, tell them it was a bridge loan. Help me." I looked at him. I didn't smile, I didn't frown. I simply adjusted my sunglasses and turned to the concierge. "Could you call my car, please?" I asked calmly. As they shoved him into the back of the federal cruiser, the paparazzi, tipped off by a mysterious anonymous caller, "Marcus earns every penny," swarmed. Flashbulbs popped like lightning. Click, 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 click. That image, Greg Stone, weeping, cuffed, being shoved into a police car, would be on the cover of the Chicago Tribune by morning. The caption, "Match point, socialite husband arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud." But while Greg was facing the flashbulbs, a different kind of horror show was unfolding 10 miles away, in the suburbs. The motel raid. Beatrice was waiting in room 204. She had packed her bags, she was fully dressed in her travel clothes. Greg had texted her earlier, before the meeting, saying, "Meeting Veronica. She's cracking. We'll get the money tonight. Pack up, we're moving back to the Gold Coast." She sat on the edge of the stained mattress, clutching her purse, checking her watch. 8 p.m., 8:30 p.m., 9 p.m. "Where is he?" she muttered, pacing the small room. "He should have called." At 9:15 p.m., there was a pounding on the door. B-O-O-M. B-O-O-M. "Finally," Beatrice huffed. She smoothed her skirt and opened the door. "Gregory, where have you been?" She stopped. It wasn't Gregory. It was a team of 4 officers from the Asset Forfeiture Division. "Beatrice Stone?" the lead officer asked. "Yes. Who are you? What do you want?" "We have a warrant to search these premises and seize any assets related to Gregory Stone under the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act." "RICO?" Beatrice shrieked. "This is a motel room. There are no assets here. My son is meeting his wife." "Your son is in federal custody, ma'am. Step aside." They pushed past her. They didn't care about her outrage. They cared about the inventory. They took the laptop bag she had hidden under the bed, Greg's other backup. They took the cash Greg had stashed in the Bible drawer, $4,000, the last of the investor money. They took the car keys to the rental. "You can't take that," Beatrice screamed, grabbing the officer's arm. "That's our transportation. How am I supposed to leave?" "That's not our problem, ma'am. Obstruction of justice is a felony. Do you want to join your son?" Beatrice froze. She looked at the officers tearing apart the cheap room. She looked at the open door, where other motel guests were watching the spectacle, smoking cigarettes on the balcony. She realized, for the first time in her life, that she was truly alone. There was no Veronica to bully, no Greg to manipulate, no house, no car, no money. The officer handed her a receipt for the seized items. "You have 30 days to contest the seizure in court," he said dryly. "With what money?" she whispered. He didn't answer. He walked out. Beatrice stood in the doorway of the Motel 6. The flashing lights of the police cruisers faded into the distance. The silence returned. The sound of the highway hummed nearby. She sat down on the curb, in the dirt, and put her head in her hands. The Queen Mother had been dethroned. The morning after. I woke up the next morning in the Four Seasons. I ordered room service, egg white omelet, fresh fruit, green tea. I turned on the TV. The news anchor was serious, but I could see the gleam in his eye. Scandals like this drive ratings. Breaking news: the downfall of a Chicago power couple. Gregory Stone, husband of real estate mogul Veronica Stone, was arraigned this morning on 12 counts of wire fraud and money laundering. Prosecutors allege Stone ran a Ponzi scheme targeting wealthy members of the Lakeview Tennis Club. The screen changed to a photo of Greg, then a photo of me, one from a gala 3 years ago where I looked heavy and unhappy. Veronica Stone, who filed for divorce yesterday, issued a statement through her attorney expressing her shock and full cooperation with the authorities. Sources say she was instrumental in uncovering the fraud. I was the hero. I was the brave survivor. My phone buzzed. It was Marcus. "Veronica," he sounded cheerful. "The arraignment is over. Bail was denied. Flight risk. He's going to county jail until the trial." "Good," I said, sipping my tea. "And Beatrice called my office. She wanted to know if you would pay for her bus ticket to her sister's house in Ohio."
I paused. I held the cup mid-air. I thought about the night in the hallway. I almost vomited my caviar. Tell her, I said slowly, that I only pay for assets, and she is a liability. Tell her to walk. Understood. I hung up. I walked to the window. The city of Chicago lay spread out before me. It was my city again. I had reclaimed it. But the work wasn't finished. Greg was in jail, yes. Beatrice was destitute, yes. But I still had $4.4 million in liquid cash sitting in offshore accounts and a reputation to rebuild. The golden hippopotamus was dead, but Veronica Stone needed a second act, and I had an idea. The phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Marcus. It was a number I didn't recognize. "This is Veronica Stone." "Mrs. Stone?" A smooth, deep voice. "My name is Julian Thorne. I represent the Apex Asset Management Group. We bought your house." "I know who you are," I said. "You got a good deal." "We did," he agreed. "But we found something in the wall safe behind the master bedroom painting, something the movers missed. We think you should see it." I frowned. I had cleared the safe. I had taken the diamonds. What had I missed? "What is it?" "It's a journal," Julian said, handwritten by Gregory Stone. "It dates back 5 years." My grip on the phone tightened. "I'll send a courier," I said. "No," Julian replied. "I think you should come get it yourself. It contains information about other partners, people bigger than your husband, dangerous people." I looked at the view. The game wasn't over. Greg was just a pawn. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. I grabbed my purse. The shark had just smelled fresh blood in the water.
I had sold this house to erase my past. Walking back into it felt like walking into a mausoleum where I was the ghost. The front door was open. Standing in the foyer was Julian Thorne. He wasn't what I expected. I expected a corporate suit, a faceless executive from Apex Asset Management. Instead, he was young, maybe 35, wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and a tool belt. He was covered in drywall dust. "Mrs. Stone." He wiped his hand on his jeans before offering it. "Sorry about the dust. We're already remodeling, tearing down the non-load-bearing walls. Open concept." "I said you work fast," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, honest. "Time is money," he smiled. A genuine smile. It was disarming. "Come, the safe is in the library." We walked through the empty living room. My footsteps echoed on the bare floorboards. The spot where I used to put the Christmas tree was just a rectangle of lighter wood now. We entered the library. The shelves were gone. The wall behind where the desk used to be was ripped open, exposing the studs and a small gray metal safe embedded in the brick. "I found it when we took down the paneling," Julian explained. "It wasn't on the blueprints." "Greg loved his secrets," I murmured. "Do you have the combination?" "I drilled it." He pointed to the hole in the lock. "I figured you wouldn't know it." He reached in and pulled out a black moleskin notebook. It was battered, stained with what looked like coffee rings and sweat. He handed it to me. "I read the first page," Julian said, his voice dropping. "That's why I called you. I didn't want to give this to the police, not yet. It seemed personal and dangerous." I opened the book. It wasn't a diary. It was a ledger. Greg's handwriting was chicken scratch, frantic. Page 1. Jan 12th, 50K from Dr. Eris, invested in VS Commercial. Note, spent 20K on crypto, 30K to Vargo. Page 5. Feb 14, 100K from Jenkins. Vargo taking 40% interest. Need more investors. Page 20. August 4th. Vargo threatening to break legs. Need to liquidate the Ferrari. Can't. Veronica would notice. I flipped through the pages. My blood ran cold. The investor pool wasn't just a Ponzi scheme to fund his lifestyle. It was a desperate attempt to pay off a loan shark. A man named Vargo. I knew that name. Anyone who does business in Chicago construction knows that name. Alexei Vargo. He runs the concrete unions. He runs the underground gambling dens. He is not a man you sue. He is a man you survive. Greg had borrowed money from the Russian mob to gamble, lost it, and then stolen money from his friends to pay the interest. And the last entry, dated 2 days before the vanishing, October 15th,
Vargo gave me a deadline, November 1st, 500K balloon payment, or he goes after the family. He knows where Beatrice lives. He knows Veronica's schedule. I closed the book. The silence in the library was deafening. Greg hadn't just betrayed me, he had endangered me. He had put a target on my back to save his own skin. That's why he was so desperate for the settlement. He needed the cash not to live, but to keep Vargo from killing him. "You know who Vargo is?" Julian asked softly. "I do," I said. "If the police get this," Julian said, "Greg is dead in prison. Vargo has reach inside. He'll have him shanked in the showers before the trial starts. I don't care about Greg. I care about the fact that Vargo thinks I have his money." I looked at Julian. "Why give this to me? You could have thrown it away. You could have blackmailed me." Julian leaned against the exposed wall studs. "My dad was a gambler," he said simply. "I saw what loan sharks did to our family. I don't like bullies, Mrs. Stone, and I figured you looked like someone who settles her own debts." I looked at this stranger. In a world of Gregs and Bob Millers, finding a decent man felt like finding a diamond in a sewer. "Thank you, Julian. I owe you one." "Just don't get killed," he said. "I'd hate to lose the previous owner before the renovation is done." I walked out of the house with the black ledger in my purse. I got into the Range Rover. I locked the doors. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline. The equation had changed. Greg was in jail. He was safe, ironically. The federal government was protecting him. Beatrice was in a motel, off the radar. But me? I was the golden hippopotamus. I was the one on the news. I was the one the papers said I had millions in assets. Vargo wouldn't care about the divorce decree. Vargo wouldn't care about marital waste. Vargo operated on a simpler law. Someone has my money. The husband is broke. The wife is rich. Get the money from the wife. I checked the date. It was October 28th. The deadline in the book was November 1st. 3 days. I could run. I could go back to Wyoming. I could fly to Singapore and disappear forever. But I was done running. I was done vanishing. I looked at the ledger again. I saw something I hadn't noticed before. In the back of the book, Greg had written down account numbers, not bank accounts, crypto wallet keys. Vargo wallet, alphanumeric string. Greg had been paying Vargo in Bitcoin to avoid a paper trail. I smiled, a cold, predatory smile. Vargo was a dinosaur. He broke legs. He used intimidation. I was a shark. I used leverage and liquidity. He wanted his money? Fine, I would give him a meeting. But I wasn't going to bring cash. I was going to bring something much more valuable to a man like Vargo. I picked up my burner phone. I dialed a number I hadn't used in 10 years. A number for a man named Silas, not the liquidator, but his cousin, the one who worked in cybersecurity for the NSA before he went freelance. "It's Veronica," I said. "I have a job. It's a trace and freeze. Target is a crypto wallet. High value, high risk." "Who is the target?" the voice asked. "Alexei Vargo." There was a long pause on the line. "That's suicide, Veronica." "No," I said, starting the engine. "It's a hostile takeover." I drove out of the gates. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors of blood and gold. Greg thought he was playing a game. Vargo thought he was the house. They forgot one thing. I own the building. I wasn't going to hide from the mob. I was going to audit them.
Here is part 9. This chapter is the highest point of tension in the story. It is the moment where the business world meets the underworld, and Veronica proves that a pen and a private key is indeed mightier than a sword. Project: the 4.4 million Vanishing Act. Format: long-form storytelling. Total target: 10,000 words. Current part: Part 9 of 10. Title: The Sit-Down, The Lion's Den. Narrator: Veronica Stone. Part 9: The Sit-Down. The camera opens on a gritty, industrial landscape. It is night in the Chicago stockyards. Steam rises from vents. A black town car glides through the desolation, stopping in front of a nondescript warehouse with the sign, Vargo Concrete and Logistics. Veronica steps out. She wears white, a stark contrast to the filth around her. Veronica:
Most people think the mob operates out of Italian restaurants with checkered tablecloths. In reality, they operate out of boring businesses, laundromats, vending machine companies, concrete plants, places where noise is expected and cash is easily washed. I had arranged the meeting through a burner number found in Greg's ledger. I sent a text. I have Greg's book. I have the crypto keys. I want to close the account. Tonight, 10 p.m. The reply was a GPS coordinate. I walked up to the steel door. There was no doorbell. A camera buzzed above me, its red eye blinking. The door buzzed and clicked unlock. I walked in. The smell hit me first. Wet cement, diesel, and stale cigar smoke. I walked through a maze of pallets until I reached a glass office suspended above the factory floor. Two men in leather jackets stood at the bottom of the stairs. They patted me down. They found my phone, which I expected, and took it. They didn't find the micro recorder sewn into the lining of my white coat, which I counted on. Upstairs, one grunted. I climbed the metal stairs. My heels rang out like bells. Ding, ding, ding. Inside the office, Alexei Vargo sat behind a metal desk that looked like it had been salvaged from a Soviet bunker. He was a wide man, bald, with a neck that disappeared into his shoulders. He was eating a sandwich wrapped in butcher paper. He didn't look up. "Mrs. Stone," he chewed, "you are thinner than the photos Greg showed me." "And you are exactly as ugly as I imagined," I said, sitting in the plastic chair opposite him. Vargo stopped chewing. He looked at me. His eyes were dead, like a shark's. "You have a big mouth for a woman who owes me $500,000. "I don't owe you anything, Mr. Vargo," I corrected him. "My husband owes you, or rather, my ex-husband." "Debts transfer." Vargo wiped his mouth. "Community property, isn't that the law?" "That is civil law. We are operating under jungle law tonight, aren't we?" Vargo laughed. It was a wet, heavy sound. "Jungle law says I break your fingers until you give me the transfer codes." "You could do that," I agreed, crossing my legs. "But then you would lose the $30 million currently sitting in your wash wallet." Vargo froze. The air in the room changed. It became vacuum-sealed. "What did you say?" I pulled a single sheet of paper from my clutch. I slid it across the desk. It was a printout of a blockchain analysis. It showed a spiderweb of transactions. It showed Greg's small payments entering a massive central hub, a wallet holding thousands of Bitcoin. Greg was an idiot, I explained calmly, but he was a meticulous idiot. He wrote down the destination addresses for his payments. He thought he was keeping records for his own safety. What he actually did was map your entire money laundering operation. Vargo picked up the paper. His hand twitched. "This is just numbers," he sneered. "Anonymous." "Not anymore," I said. "You see, I hired a contractor, former NSA. He traced the IP stamps on the exit nodes. We know this wallet belongs to you. We know it funnels money to accounts in Cyprus and Latvia." I leaned forward. "Here is the situation, Alexei. At this moment, a scheduled email is sitting in a cloud server. It contains this map, the IP logs, and the decryption keys Greg inadvertently recorded. It is addressed to the FBI, the IRS, and Interpol." Vargo stood up. The chair screeched backward. He looked ready to kill me with his bare hands. "You think you can blackmail me?" he roared. "I can make you disappear before you reach the stairs." "You can," I said, not flinching. "But it's a dead man's switch. If I don't log in and cancel the email every 12 hours, it sends automatically. If I disappear, send. If I die, send. If you break my fingers and I can't type, send." Vargo stared at me. He was calculating. He was a predator, but he was also a businessman. He was weighing $500,000 against $30 million and a lifetime in prison. "What do you want?" he growled, sitting back down. "I want a settlement," I said, "a paid-in-full receipt." "For the $500,000? "No," I said, "for everything. You forget about the debt. You forget about me. You forget about the Stone family. Greg took my money. He disrespected me. Greg is in federal custody. He is going to prison for a long time. He is ruined. He's crying in a cell right now. Isn't that punishment enough?" Grunted. "He is a rat. He will talk." "He doesn't know about the big wallet," I lied. "Only I know.
Greg just knew where to send his payments. He's too stupid to understand the architecture. If you leave him alone, he has nothing to trade. Vargo looked at the paper again. He picked up his lighter and set the corner on fire. He watched it burn to ash in the metal ashtray. "And you?" asked Vargo. "How do I know you won't talk?" "Because I'm a businesswoman, Alexei. I don't care about your operation. I care about my freedom. As long as you stay away from me, I stay away from the send button." Vargo watched the ash settle. "If I ever see you again," he said quietly, "I will not ask for money. I will take your skin." "If you ever see me again," I replied, standing up, "it will be because you have lost everything." I turned my back on him. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. My spine tingled. Every instinct screamed that a bullet was coming. I walked down the metal stairs. Ding, ding, ding. I walked past the guards. I walked out the steel door into the cold night air. I got into the town car. "Go," I told the driver. "Fast." As the car pulled away, my hands started to shake. The adrenaline crash hit me like a tidal wave. I gasped for air, clutching my chest. I had stared into the eyes of a monster and forced him to blink. I checked my watch, 10:30 p.m. I took out my burner phone and typed a code, reset timer. There was no NSA email. There was no dead man switch. It was a bluff. Silas had traced the wallet, yes, but we couldn't prove Vargo owned it. The IP trace was circumstantial. If Vargo had called my bluff, I would be dead. But narcissists and bullies have one weakness. They are paranoid. They assume everyone is as dangerous as they are. I laughed, a hysterical, breathless laugh in the back of the car. I had beaten the husband. I had beaten the mob. There was only one loose end left: the money. My $4.4 million was safe, but Beatrice was still out there, and Greg was about to get a visitor. I told the driver to change course. "Where to, ma'am?" "To Cook County Jail," I said. "I have a visitation to make." It was time to say goodbye properly and to deliver the final receipt.
There is a myth that revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. Revenge is a dish best served precise. It had been 3 months since the arrest. The trial was scheduled for the spring, but everyone knew there wouldn't be a trial. The evidence from the laptop was overwhelming. Greg's lawyer, a public defender who looked like he hadn't slept in a week, was negotiating a plea deal, 12 years, maybe 8 with good behavior. Greg picked up the phone receiver. His hands were cuffed to the table. He looked at me, and his eyes filled with tears. Not the fake tears of the lobby, but the terrified tears of a man who has realized that rock bottom has a basement. "Ronnie," he choked out, "you came." "I did," I said, my voice steady. "I had to close the account." "Get me out. Please, I can't do this. Vargo, his guys are in here. I have to pay protection money just to use the bathroom. I'm scared, Ronnie. I'll do anything. I'll sign anything. Just pay for a private lawyer. Get me bail." I looked at him. I looked for the man I had married 10 years ago. I looked for the charm, the smile, the tennis pro who swept me off my feet. All I saw was a stranger, a weak, parasitic stranger. "I can't help you, Greg," I said. "All my assets are tied up in new investments, and besides, I don't pay for liabilities anymore." "How can you be so cold?" he sobbed. "I was your husband. We had a life. Just because of some money? Just because of a few mistakes?" "It wasn't the money, Greg." I leaned closer to the glass. "Do you remember that Thursday night, the night before I sold the house?" He frowned, confused. "What?" "You were in the library with your mother. You were drinking my Macallan, and you told her something." He froze. The memory flickered behind his eyes. "You called me a golden hippopotamus," I said softly. "You said I disgusted you. You said you just had to wait 2 years to cash out and send me back to the swamp." Greg's face went white. He stopped breathing. You heard that?" "Every word," I nodded. "And you were right about one thing, Greg. Hippos are heavy. They are clumsy on land, but you forgot the most important fact about hippopotamuses." "What?" he whispered. "They are the most dangerous large land mammal on the planet.
I smiled. And if you enter their territory, they don't just bite you, they snap you in half. He stared at me. The realization washed over him. He hadn't just been caught, he had been hunted. His own arrogance had handed me the rifle. "I'm sorry," he wept, putting his head on the table. "I'm so sorry." "I know, but apologies are like currency, Greg. They're only worth something if the person accepts them, and your credit score is 0. I hung up the phone. I didn't say goodbye. I stood up, smoothed my blazer, and walked out. I didn't look back at him banging his forehead against the glass. He was already a memory. The bus stop. My driver took me to the Greyhound station on Harrison Street. I didn't get out. I just rolled down the window. Beatrice was there. She was sitting on a plastic bench, flanked by 2 garbage bags containing her clothes. She wore a coat that was clearly from a thrift store, oversized and gray. She was eating a sandwich out of a wrapper. She looked small. The Queen Mother posture was gone, replaced by the slump of survival. She was waiting for the bus to Ohio, to live in her sister's basement, a sister she hadn't spoken to in 20 years because she considered her low class. She looked up and saw the town car. She saw me. Her eyes narrowed. For a second, I saw the old spark of malice. She opened her mouth, perhaps to scream an obscenity, perhaps to beg. I pressed the button. The tinted window rolled up. Zip! She was gone. The new foundation. My driver took me north, back to the Gold Coast, but we didn't go to a house, we went to a construction site. A massive crane towered over the skyline. A sign out front read, "Future site of the Stone Tower, luxury residences and commercial spaces." I got out of the car. Julian Thorne was waiting for me by the entrance. He wore a hard hat and held a set of blueprints. "Mrs. Stone," he smiled. "We're ahead of schedule. The foundation is poured." "Good," I said, taking a hard hat he offered. "And the financing?" "The bank approved the loan this morning. Your down payment of $4.4 million secured the rest. You are the majority shareholder. No partners, no husbands." I looked up at the steel skeleton rising into the sky. I had lost a house. I had lost a marriage. I had lost 10 years of my life to a lie. But standing there, in the cold wind of Chicago, I realized I hadn't lost anything of value. I had liquefied a bad life to build a better one. I turned to Julian. "One change to the plans," I said. "Yes?" "The lobby," I said. "I want a sculpture in the center fountain." "What kind of sculpture? An abstract? A lion?" I smiled. A real smile. One that reached my eyes. "No, a hippopotamus made of solid gold." Julian laughed. "Seriously?" "Dead seriously. Let it be a warning to anyone who enters." I walked into the construction site, my heels clicking on the concrete. The fat wife was gone. The victim was gone. Veronica Stone was here, and she was just getting started.